This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Right, okay, it's 7:30. Hello everybody and welcome to another live Q&A on Telegram with Paul Johnson, the CEO of Power Metal Resources, Oliver Friesen, the CEO of Golden Metal Resources, and Tristan Pottas, the CEO of First Development Resources. I'm Mark Fairbairn. I'm sure you all know that by now from Stockbox, and I'll be hosting the session, fielding your questions to each CEO tonight. We've already had quite a few questions put forward, so thank you all for submitting so far. And we'll start with those questions, and then the Telegram admin will open the floor to everyone here to ask any further questions by either typing in the group or, if you dare, asking them live. And please don't hold back. The CEOs are here for you. Now, of course, with any questions, the companies are bound by the rules of the London Stock Exchange, but Paul, Oliver, and Tristan will do their best to answer all questions. So, Paul Johnson, the CEO of Power Metal Resources. Welcome back, Paul. Before we go into the Q&A, I want to just ask you, just with the current market downturn, why do you think as CEO of Power Metal Resources, why do you think the company is well placed to come out of this when indeed the tide does come in and all boats rise?
That's a great question, Mark, and hello to everyone. We have an immense opportunity in front of us, I believe, in the coming years. I've been investing in the stock market and the natural resource sector specifically for, 13, 14 years now. I've seen it change my life. I've seen it change the lives of many, many investors. Regrettably, not always in terms of making them wealthier. It's a difficult environment to live in and to work with. I've been running AIM, natural resource companies now for about 10 years. And with the investing experience and the public company experience, I've seen what actually makes companies ultimately deliver. And in Power Metal, we are embodying that knowledge in everything that we do. We've been building our business for 3 years. Since the restructure refinance in early 19. We built to circa 14 project packages across 3 continents. We've not just built the projects, we've built very carefully to make sure that we cover a number of critical, strategic, very important metals across that portfolio. We've covered geologies of different types, so we're not going after the same thing. And we've done it in a variety of structures to give our shareholders good broad exposure through the corporate structuring as well as the commodity and the geology. And most importantly of all, and this is something I've learned over the years to my cost when I haven't got right, we built it with some incredible people. And we've got 2 CEOs on tonight with me who represent the best in class, in my view, in their industry. Geologists with commercial experience and immense capability. So we think, or I think, that we're well placed because we've built the business with an eye for the future and for where we thought the world would go, with an absolutely immense demand for metal, with a limited number of real quality projects out there in the world, and with a market where the mid-tiers and the majors are desperate for the next set of projects to build the pipelines that they've really not built quite as effectively as perhaps they would like now in their businesses. And I hope that the work that we do and the trust that we have from our shareholders in our business model delivers in spades for those with the confidence, trust, and willingness to invest in our company. Okay.
Just a little follow-on from that, just on the Power Metals messaging, you've talked about the momentum, building momentum, and the power of momentum. And sticking with the analogy of when all boats rise, is it better to be a large tanker that builds up momentum and keeps going for a long time with lots of things going on, or nimble speedboat that shoots off. What do you think, Paul?
Well, I prefer the kind of aircraft carrier.
Okay.
Example, because we've built up an aircraft carrier with multiple high-speed aircraft, and they're starting to take off, whether that be projects or whether that be vehicles, planned IPOs or disposals. And it's only when you start to see the real excitement when each one lifts off that you begin to realize the potential of the model. But that's what we always knew, Mark, and we knew we'd have to build to a point where the market had confidence in what we're doing. And we're coming to a critical point in that regard with a number of different things within our business.
Okay, excellent. I like that analogy, Paul. You've got both things in there: the momentum and the speed. So yeah, an aircraft carrier. That's nice. Let me just introduce Oliver Friesen, the CEO of Golden Metal Resources. Now, Oliver, of course, it must be exciting times ahead for you and the company, Golden Metal Resources, with the planned IPO. Now, it's a pure Nevada play. What makes the project stand out in this tier 1 mining jurisdiction, do you think?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Mark. And that's a great question. I think what sort of stands out to me at the moment is our flagship Pilot Mountain project. In the light of the recent tensions between between Ukraine and Russia, I think there's been a very significant push towards securing homeland security of strategic metals. And in the light of that, Pilot Mountain project is quite significant for Golden Metal Resources for multiple reasons. But in the light of kind of what I just mentioned there in terms of the strategic nature of the asset, there's a few things that I can kind of highlight to the investors. Number one, it is the largest undeveloped tungsten resource within the United States. On top of that, it is located in the top mining jurisdiction within the United States and one of the top in the world being Nevada. On top of that, there's currently no domestic production of tungsten within the United States. And sort of to add to that, 80% of 2021 global supply of tungsten came from China. So when you sort of add all those things up, you can kind of get a bit of a picture as to how strategic this particular asset is. But on top of that, I think more importantly, as a geologist myself and someone who's focused on making discoveries, the thing that gets me the most excited about the project is the sort of discovery and exploration blue sky potential that we're going to be tapping into. So, when you look at the strategic nature of the tungsten deposit or the asset alone, I think investors can get an idea as to how important this asset is going to be going forward. But I think more importantly, as I mentioned, with the exploration work that we have planned post-listing, I think investors are going to see a lot of really exciting exploration news flow come out of this one. As you know, we're sort of surging through the listing process now, so we haven't been able to sort of speak too much about what's been going on in the background. But investors should know that we are obviously working and getting the sort of exploration plans in place now. And there's a lot of really exciting targets that we're looking forward to explore with geophysics first, and then with drilling. So I think Pilot Mountain project, in terms of kind of what stands out for me, it's kind of the multiple factors there. As the investors might know, we do have additional assets in the portfolio which are very exciting in their own right. I won't go into the detail on those, but yeah, there's a lot to look forward to here as we push towards listing with Golden Metal.
Okay, and just on Pilot Mountain, then, of course, it is a tungsten project, and that was announced a few years ago. I think that tungsten is a strategic metal as part of the United States announcement there. You must have your ear to the ground on things that are going on over in the United States. And I do recall a round table that President Biden did maybe a couple of months ago, where he talked about securing how important it is to secure homegrown commodities and the support that the United States government are giving directly to mining companies. Do you get a similar feeling from what you're hearing, Oliver?
Yeah, those are all really good points, Mark. And yes, we definitely keep our ear very close to the ground. The priority right now is getting through the listing process and getting the company listed, obviously, so we can kind of push forward with our exploration plans. But absolutely, we have a kind of a running tally of all the different sort of developments that have come down the pipe in the United States. Considering that Biden is a president that typically wouldn't support the mining industry, or his political party is typically not very pro-mining. It's really encouraging to see sort of the different things that are coming out of his administration. They're obviously recognizing the need for domestic homegrown sources of strategic metals, and tungsten very much fits into that. And that's a good point. It's worth mentioning that tungsten was actually re-added to the 2022 USGS critical minerals list. So it's been on that list for a couple of years now. So in terms of how we're going to follow up on these sort of various developments, we have a list here, and David Ovadia, who's our chairman, non-exec chairman, he's really well connected with the BGS. The British Geological Survey has done a lot of work sort of in conjunction with the USGS and various United States organizations. So David will be very sort of important as we start to push this narrative in the United States, and look at ways to tap into the various sort of funding and sort of fast track permitting routes that are now becoming available for projects like this.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Oliver. Well, before we just start with the Q&A, let's just introduce the other guest tonight, of course, the CEO of First Development Resources, Tristan Potas. Tristan, welcome again onto the live Q&A. I know you've been traveling. You've recently visited Australia, and you've had the chance to visit all the projects in the company's portfolio firsthand. What makes you think that the planned IPO for FDR is a potentially investable proposition? Can I ask you?
Sure. Hi, Mark, and good evening, everybody on the call. Like you say, I came back from Australia, or I was in Australia in March, and as we've spoken on previous announcements, it was great to get out there, get out to the projects and meet the team out there and get a real sense as to what we're up to from a logistical perspective. So, FDR, like any junior explorer, we're looking to differentiate ourselves, from the pack, because ultimately, we have a proposition like many other exploration companies, all competing for a limited pool of capital, and that's great. But I think what differentiates FDR is there's several points really. In my opinion, we've got a well thought out project portfolio. We're targeting strategic metals, key metals in the right place at the right time. And what I mean by that is, you've only got to open a newspaper and see where the world's going from a electric vehicle, battery perspective, or alternative energy. The Northern Territory is a really great place to be looking for those types of metals, and to be in the same jurisdiction as Arafura Resources with their Knowles-Bore deposit gives us a lot of encouragement. We've got a really experienced and knowledgeable board who understand the challenges that we face from a technical, geographical, and a process perspective. We've got a board that they've been through the process. They understand, particularly from an exploration perspective, that where the risks are, where the opportunities are, and when things don't always go to plan, as invariably when you're drilling boreholes, you always come up against something. And having a team of people who understand those challenges and how to get through them is really important. So we're not a finance-heavy board. I'd probably argue that we're probably leaning a bit towards the technical side, but I think at this stage it's a really good assembly of professionals that we've acquired. Beyond the board, we've across the management team and all of the supporting roles, if you like, in Australia and in the UK. What we have is a shared vision, and even at this early stage, I'd suggest that we're already developing a really positive culture, which is focused on delivery. And I think above all, we like Power, we are not a lifestyle company. We have a desire to put money into the ground and go after and develop these projects to give ourselves ultimately the best chance of making a significant discovery.
Okay, yes. I know we spoke about that before, and one of the things you were impressed with before you joined the company was the work ethic at Power Metals. And I think we can see that with your recent trip out to Australia and the interviews you did on site. Thank you very much for doing those. That's the first time we managed to get interviews on site. Shame about the flies, but I noticed in later interviews you did have a face covering. So that's maybe one of the challenges to watch out for in Australia.
Easy, Mark. But it was great. It was really good doing that, and I hope people appreciated the opportunity to get a look behind the scenes, if you like. A lot of work went on across, by the whole team. It was a real team effort. It was really good.
Excellent. No, it's very important to do that. I think shareholders do appreciate the communications like that. So thank you, Tristan. Okay, well, let's start with the Q&A then. That's what we're here for. So, Paul, I have a question for you to begin with. We have 14 projects in various regions in various countries, exploring for many different commodities. Can we expect anything brand new to be added to the list in the near future, or are POW currently focused on what they have in the portfolio for now?
Yeah, this is a great question. If I was an investor, I'd be thinking, please no more.
Please no more. Yeah.
And we share the same view, I have to say, because we've got an immense portfolio built for a reason, because we have this plan to create new vehicles, to make disposals, and to build our capital value of our business, our balance sheet value, alongside undertaking exploration and looking for major metal deposits. That said, we keep our door open all the time for any new opportunities. We receive an awful lot through the door. We don't spend a great deal of time on them at the moment because our focus is really elsewhere within the business as it stands. If something significant came up, we would have a look at it. We do have Power Capital Investments, which of course enables us to look at things that's off the radar to a degree. If anything material transpired through the work that we're doing there, then that would justify a market announcement, and people would find out about it. But I would say the onus of our business at the moment is definitely on delivering against the current portfolio rather than trying to build even more.
Okay, yeah. So focus on what you've got currently rather than spread too thin. Okay, good. But no opportunity turned down if it looks promising. The next question I have, Paul, I know this has come up a couple of times before, but where are POW with recruiting new board members? Any update on that?
Quite active actually. We need to get the right people into our business. We've always said that. Recruitment in the junior natural resource space is often it seems like friends and family in some cases. People that are brought onto boards know the other board members. We don't want to do that. We want to have a good, diverse board. We're looking to be a big company, so that board needs to be constructed of a good mix of skills. We're slightly weighted, we're totally weighted towards accounting, broking, for the financial services kind of industry at the moment. And we know we need to broaden our capabilities on the board. But more importantly, it has been about the right people. They are hard to come by, I can tell you. There's a lot of people who will apply for roles. Hey, why not? In Power Metal, all of our board members have been paid. A lot of these junior resource companies, it's feast and famine, and the board members often don't get much compensation paid to them on a regular basis. We pay reasonable salaries and we pay them on schedule every month. So it's a great place to work. I'm determined it will be a success, or, directors want to be part of a successful story. So that when we do put ourselves out there to recruit, we get a lot of interest, we've had to fish through that interest and find the right people. We're working on it. As soon as I can get to a point, or the company, not me, can get to a point where we're ready, to make an announcement, we will do. Have to also remember that any incoming directors have to go through full stock market due diligence, which is an important part of the process. And depending on where they're situated, it can take longer to do that work, that due diligence work, than perhaps if they were situated, in the UK. So there's lots of things to consider. We're on it, we're working on it, but we're going to get the right people. Okay.
Well, maybe next time we have this Q&A, there will be an answer to that question. Well, we will know who that person or persons are. Now, the next question I have then is regarding Monopo Farms. Monopo Farm project is the one that first caught my attention, so I was disappointed no agreement was reached to move forward. Sounds like only one party did want to agree with the proposed way forward. How big is the percentage of the project owned by that party? And could the stake owned by that party be bought out?
Okay, so I think the question is more about those one party, that didn't agree with the proposition, and therefore could that stake be bought out? But this is a specific question, and it's difficult for me to give precise information on that without breaching confidentialities and so on. Monopo Farm is Monopo Farm's complex project is a significant project for us. Significant because it's obviously district scale, targeting nickel PGMs. Exactly the kind of large scale project in a safe, secure jurisdiction with the right commodities in focus. Exactly the kind of thing we need to be involved with, and we are. We have a circa 53% interest in the project, allowing for our direct holding in the project 40%, and our shareholding in Kalahari Key, which has the other 60%. We want it to be a success. It has been so far. Our first drill program in the second hole, K16, we got the nickel sulfides we were looking for. We got some really interesting nickel grade, up to 1.7%. Nickel only over a short intersection, but it was, a great start. You have to remember, a couple of thousand square kilometers. You stick 3 drill holes in it. If you hit the target commodity in the second hole, you're onto a good thing, and it's something you want to pursue and push forward at pace. So we were disappointed that we couldn't get that deal with Kavango over the line. We've worked well with Kavango for quite some time, and they would have been a great partner. We've said in the RNS that we're looking to resolve, the situation and to find the best way forward for the project going forward. We're doing that as we speak, and we have been since the announcements came out about that project. And I just want to get on with the work there, because this is the kind of thing that junior companies like ours are desperate to have within the portfolio. There is immense value. And this, I believe, is the kind of project that the majors and the mid-tiers are really interested in. What they do, I've seen this a few times now, that what they do seem to like is not just, the geological model that's proposed, not just the geophysics and all the rest. They seem to like diamond drill core, get some rock out of the ground so they can have a look at face-to-face with the geology. And we've got all those things in place, and we want to move it forward to the next level as quickly as we can. So I've avoided the question there, Mark, because
I was going to push a bit more, but I guess you're going to tell me you can't actually answer. If you can buy the party out effectively.
Oh, look, whatever way there is to do this, as long as it's fair, reasonable, as long as we can carry the shareholders in Kalahari Key through the process, however it's constructed, the main focus is let's get this project rolling, let's get work being done, and we're working on the corporate side of this business opportunity to enable that geological work to be undertaken as soon as we can.
Okay. So the next question I have, I quite like this one. We've always spoken before about when one project perhaps starts to lift off, and that is the question: if one project started to ignite with a drill success, for example, would Power look to sell it to fund the best of the rest, or vice versa? Would this lead to a concentration of activity on that project, assuming that these are the only 2 options?
Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of excitement about vehicles being sold in our space, or about projects being sold. But the reality is, if you look back over history, there aren't a lot of those transactions that take place, other than within particularly boisterous markets when there's a lot of interest in the metal space. So you could argue that we're moving into a time where acquisitive activity is increasing and will increase far more. So if one assumes that environment is in place, and we get to a point with a project where somebody came along and made an offer, well, that's a nice problem to have, because on the one hand, anything that drives a third party to come in and make a serious offer must be a very, very exciting, positive proposition. And it's the kind of thing you do want to keep within your portfolio and keep pushing forward. But just to ask a question back to shareholders, and I know they can't, or investors, I know they can't respond. If the power metal business, suddenly had 20 million pounds on the table to deploy within its business, what would you think? Is it better for the company to take that money in and then deploy it across the business to accelerate all activity? Or is it better to say that with that kind of offer, the project must have immense value, We need to crunch down and focus on that project and push it forward. And I think it's very much a question that's in the moment when it happens that you have to make that decision. Because, if the market is tough on, providing capital for junior companies, then you're naturally predisposed to, if you've got a slug of capital available to you, to accept it. If the market is very positive and willing to invest in junior companies, then you don't have to worry about capital related issues, and you may decide that it's better to raise a block of money, and I'm talking about general juniors, not just POW, and then take the project forward to a certain level yourself. In the early stages, on discovery and post discovery, there is a real step up in value if you push something forward yourself. I'm thinking back to the Sirius Resources discovery, the Nova nickel discovery in Western Australia, where the share was trading a few years ago at circa 5 cents a share, and they made the Nova nickel discovery, and they, I think, raised the first capital around 70. I could be wrong on my figures here, 70 cents, and then the share ultimately rose to circa $5. So continuation of that project was a great idea, and had they have accepted a relatively small amount of money, although it was desperately needed capital, I suppose, for a typical junior, it would have been the wrong call. So if we get to that fortunate position, then we will sit down and look at it very, very carefully and form a balanced view. We'll take guidance from the people that we work with. We'll obviously consider the potential of the deployment of capital within our business going forward and what it could do for the company. And we'll look at all things in the round and form a view. And we will, whatever decision is taken, we will explain ourselves thoroughly to the market with regard to why we've gone down a particular route.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you can cross that bridge when you come to it, and I'm sure shareholders do want to express an opinion on that. They can type in the group, and we'll see what response we get. What I'm going to do is just go to Oliver Friesen now, just for a moment. Give you a slight break there, Paul, because I have a lot of questions for you back to back. I need a drink of water as well. So, Oliver, the question for you: I see there is a planned pilot mountain phase 1 exploration program for GMR post IPO. Is it possible to get the ball rolling on a pre-feasibility study with what is known and then update the resource after additional exploration? Is the project conducive to designing facilities for the existing resource and then possibly scaled up later, especially given tungsten's new strategic importance in the United States? Okay, so there's sort of two parts to that question, isn't there? The first one is regarding getting the ball rolling on a pre-feasibility study with what is known about the resource. So let's take that section first.
Yeah, that's a great question there, Mark. So just to sort of touch on that, so that as investors are likely aware, this project was previously held by Thor Mining. And back in 2017, 2018, they did quite a bit of drilling. And following that, they had some really positive results, and they decided to go essentially the development route with the project. Now, with that being said, Golden Metal Resources, we are an exploration junior mining vehicle. And as a geologist whose background is in sort of the exploration and side of the industry, that's an area that I sort of feel the most strongly about and probably have the most experience. So in terms of the Pilot Mountain project, it's, as you mentioned, it's incredibly strategic, and the question is, how do we push it forward? And to answer that, there's essentially several high priority exploration targets on this property that we've identified that we want to go and drill test. There's several areas, several sort of exploration targets between the 4 existing deposits. And then on top of that, there's some copper and tungsten rich intersections as you move further east of any drilling that's been done historically. So, we're an exploration company. Typically when companies do go down the development route, it could be quite capital intensive. On top of that, the news flow can generally dry up quite quickly as you kind of wait for various permits and sort of those type of developments to take place. So in terms of pre-feasibility study or any sort of economic study, our main goal remains on pushing the exploration forward as we get out of the gates here post listing. With that being said, There's a lot of work that we're going to be doing sort of on the side that will continue to de-risk the asset. Things like additional metallurgy. We'll be looking to sort of upgrade the existing resource categories. So these are all important things that essentially get this project to the point where potentially a larger mining company would look to take it over. But to answer your question, we're not looking to do any sort of economic study within year one. I'll also mention that a scoping study has been done on this project. So it very much is conducive to the development route, and a lot of positive outcomes came out of that study. But our investors should know that we are an exploration company. We tend to stay true to that. We're going to be really pushing for the exploration. I think I mentioned earlier on this call, we're going to start with property-wide high-resolution geophysics, which has never been done on the asset, and then shortly after that, we're going to launch into a pretty robust diamond drilling campaign. But ultimately, all the work that we're doing will eventually, it could be worked into some sort of economic analysis. So it's certainly it's a project that considering how strategic it is and how advanced it is as it stands now, we know it's one that potentially a larger mining company could very much be interested in down the road. So we're obviously going to be cognizant of that and look to de-risk the asset. But as I mentioned, the exploration and the plan for year one is going to remain on pushing the exploration forward. Our goal is to increase the size and grade of the resource, as well as make additional discoveries in areas that haven't been drilled before.
Okay, so focus on exploration and drilling and getting that resource a bit higher. What about the part of the question about designing facilities for the existing resource and then possibly scaled up later? Is that something that you would hold off on as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I touched on that briefly in my previous answer. So as I mentioned, there was a scoping study that was done on this project. So those studies obviously look at sort of the potential development type scenario, where those potential different facilities might lie. So that provides a really good sort of starting point or building block for us to work off of. So a lot of that information will be valuable down the line here as we sort of advance exploration, look to make additional discoveries, de-risk the asset with additional metallurgy and upgrade of existing resources. Then ultimately the work that's been done historically on the scoping study will be worked into an economic analysis that we could maybe look at completing probably or likely in 2023 could be a reasonable outcome for that.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. So let me bring Paul back in now. I have some more questions for you, Paul, lined up. So the next one I have is, was the company almost too successful in share price terms during 2020? Did you get more warrant conversions than anticipated? And if so, how did this influence the company that we see today?
Can you ever be too successful in our space? Certainly not from an investor's perspective on share price. Yeah, I mean, the volumes of trading moved quite significantly higher in 2020 and into early 21. The share price moved with it. It did drag a lot of warrant conversions. I'm really grateful for that event, actually, and that we were able to draw in capital in the way that we did. Because it enables us to put in place a number of the building blocks that you see today. And there is an argument about warrants, and well, primarily they're there to be converted. That's the whole idea. We've always priced our warrants at a considerable premium to the then share price. So if they're converting, then you've moved up from a historic point in time. They are a frustration sometimes for holders who see warrants being converted at lower prices, and that's one of the downsides when you are successful as a business and your price does rise on the back of people taking an interest in what you're doing. It's always got to be a managed situation. I don't think we were too successful in that sense. I think we've been hit with the price going up to 3.4 and then down to circa 1.2. We were hit with the general trends. It's almost impossible to separate yourself from that when you're in a particular sector and you're in a marketplace or a part of a marketplace that's pulling back. It is the case that poor companies pull back in difficult markets. Good companies pull back in difficult markets, oftentimes because you can become a bit of a cash machine on the way down. If you keep your liquidity up and we didn't have staggering liquidity in the last year or so, but we've had reasonable liquidity. Then people can use it as a reason for getting money out of a particular stock, and it can disproportionately affect you. So you begin to look like everybody else. Now, that's a feature of the marketplace. It's one that does spook out a lot of investors and make them worry about whether a proposition is viable. If the market doesn't like it, then surely it's not worth much more than the current valuation, and that in some cases is right and in some cases is wrong. I believe the experience we had in 2021 through into earlier this year was wrong in terms of the development of the business, the value that we were creating, but we've just really kept headstrong, focused, and pushed forward. We haven't changed our communication approach to the market. We haven't hidden away. We haven't changed our operational ethos. We've done we're including what's we're undertaking at the moment. We've done 6 drill programs over the last 18 months. So far more active than most of our peers. We're creating and putting in place multiple planned corporate vehicles, IPOs, and we've taken a view in our business that we didn't want to be shy. And we didn't want to hide away. We wanted to crack on with things. And what enabled us to do that was the conversion of the warrants back in 2020, early 21. Now we have the model, we have the business, we've used that money wisely. Now, I don't know the precise figure, but if you look at how much we've raised through financings, and then you add on the money that we've raised through warrant exercises, and then you take off our remainder, as it were, working capital, it isn't a vast amount of money. I don't know, 5 million or so approximately. I'm just guessing a figure out there, of money that's been expended in terms of building our business model to where it is today. So we've really been able to use that capital at a very difficult time in the market that came into us from financings and warrant exercises to position ourselves in some significant and broad spectrum natural resource interests, whilst the market has been a little bit turned off. And I think it's turning on. So it's all well and good for me to say I think it all worked out fine with all the conversions or warrant exercises and the pain and difficulty that causes certain investors as we go through that process. But the proof of the pudding is what happens going forward with those interests.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Okay. And do you know the current shareholding and warrants breakdown in Kavanga Resources at the moment?
Yeah. Okay. So we had back in let me get me dates right. April 20. Actually in the middle of the lockdown when it started, we were doing the Kavanga transaction, and the transaction started with us effectively having it was a convertible loan note which converted into 4 points. I hope I don't get the figures wrong here. 4.75 million shares in Kavanga, and those 4.75 million shares came with 4.75 million 1p warrants. Which had a what we call a super warrant, I guess, to them, that if you converted within, I think it was a year, you got another 4.75 million warrants at 2.5p. So we converted the first set, and because we'd be mad not to, and then we have 4.75 million 2.5p warrants. Now we don't talk about specific trading activity in terms of the the shareholdings unless we're required to do so by notifiable holdings and any other market disclosures that are required. But let me say this, that in our business we've had a couple of interests where we've done commercial deals with a company, and where we've taken not just a project stake as we did with Kuturo Gold and Panetti, and over the Kanye Resources ditto KCB with Kavango, and we set out our stall as long-term holders. Now that comes with a price sometimes when share prices don't move as you would like them to, much as any other investor. Power Metal Resources on its investment portfolio side wants to see the share price relentlessly go up to the stars, but it doesn't work like that in reality. But if as a business we want to go and market ourselves to other propositions and businesses going forward, that we're a strong joint venture partner, that we won't just drop stock willy-nilly for the sake of it, then we have to go out and market. We have to go out and demonstrate that into the market. So we are long-term holders on our interests, and we are particularly excited about the prospects at Kavango Resources, and we've said that multiple times.
Okay.
The joint venture partners on some of them.
Yes, indeed. So you can't disclose the current shareholding, but there are 4.72 million 2p warrants. I guess the finals will show the more detail, will they, Paul, when they come out?
Yeah, the ultimate place where you would make disclosures, that is probably in your results, your interims and your finals. There are a number of times when you may have to make disclosures. If you make a vast profit on disposal, then that can sometimes trigger an announcement. You will probably want to make that announcement, if you've made a vast profit, and to tell the world that, it's really helped your working capital position and so on. But it's the kind of thing that, if you answer that question all the time, then you continually get the question asked again, and then have you sold any, have you bought any, and you can't really go into into that level of detail when you're running a public company. But I keep reiterating, and hopefully this gets the message across, that we've always set out our stall as long-term holders of our positions and being reliable partners, not just under joint ventures where we make our payments on a timely basis and we support the companies that we work with, but also if we have shareholdings in those companies, we don't want to be flippers at all.
Okay. Now, just a question on the IPOs then. Could shares from IPOs be distributed to POW shareholders? And as management are also shareholders, this could be a way for the management team to benefit from the value created. So what do you think to that? Is that an option?
Well, we're setting out we're going through the process with the capital reduction process to enable us to distribute not just cash as dividends, but also we could distribute shares that we held. The plan is that we'll have an awful lot of various shares that in theory we could distribute. Whether we will choose to do it or not depends on what's the best thing for the business. Capital retention is important in our world because we're explorers. So, having the ability to build your working capital, some of which you can deploy into your exploration programs, is important. Giving people access to capital distributions is an important thing potentially as well. There are taxation implications on that. If you do distributions in certain ways, then you obviously have to look at the level of tax that the recipients may have to suffer, and that can significantly reduce the returns available. So we've got to look at a lot of different issues. Yes, I'm the largest current shareholder in the business, and from my perspective, then yes, of course, personally, I can see the merits of distributions, but I can also recognise my role, and my role is to enrich in the best possible way the shareholders of the company, not just me. Something that I think many directors forget about in our world, and it's not a point that's forgotten in our business. We are focused on the shareholders as a group, so it's what's best for the whole, not just the directors.
Okay. Now, have Redrock Resources sold their stake completely, given the TR holding showing their stake reducing? That question comes from the let's throw a curveball at the CEO and see if he flops. I can't. I can't answer that question. There was a TR1 published with regard to that company's holdings in Power Metal. Let me tell you something. When people sell shares in my company, it doesn't worry me in the slightest. First of all, if they're able to sell
a particular block of stock if they needed to sell it. That's important because it shows that the market is willing to absorb that stock, which is the function of being on a listed company market, that people can buy and people can sell. I want people to feel confidence if they buy a position in our company and they need that capital at some point, they can take it out. Secondly, that any one particular shareholder's actions, one way or another, don't detract from what this business is trying to do, because it doesn't mean that it's a poor business if a party has to sell for whatever reason at any time. We've all learned in recent times that amazing things can happen in our market. Look at Greatland Gold. Back in 2015, 16, 0.1 pence a share or less, all the way up to 38 pence in early 21. If a company gets it right, it doesn't matter who's bought, who's sold on the way through. The market value and the share price will rise accordingly, helped along by a positive market conditions. So I can't give specific information, but whether they've bought, sold, or whatever, it doesn't really worry me. We crack on with the business.
Okay. Now, many junior explorers make a big deal and a lot of noise for their individual drill programs, for better or for worse. And POW has so many projects on the go that it's easy to overlook each drill program. I think there's been 6 or so in the last year, or not see any as particularly transformational, even when the results might be positive. So how much of an issue is this for POW? And I'll just add a bit to that. If it is an issue, what are you doing about it?
Yeah, I think I mentioned before that we've launched 6 drill programs and completed most of them in the last 18 months, which is a level of activity far greater than many of our peers. And this is a problem. It's a fair point, because if you're only doing 1 drill program a year, you can build up the momentum on a target. You can really talk about it. You can show lots of charts, graphs, diagrams, and really get the investors focused on it, create a buzz of excitement, a bit like when you're reading a book, you make your own story. I think that's the same for all of us private investors when we get engaged and passionate about a stock. And then when the drill program eventually starts, because there hasn't been one for quite a while, there's a real flurry of excitement and people really go, get buzzy about something. And then there's the pictures come out from site and the bits and pieces of results come out, and then eventually you build to the assay results. It's all very exciting. But I think what's important to recognize, and I've kind of had to fight this with myself as a private investor, is that most drill programs fail. And they fail because of a lack of deployment of capital in advance of the drill program to properly select the targets. They fail because there's not enough work done in the drill program itself. There's not enough holes, not enough meterage. And they fail in many cases because companies don't have the ability to take forward what they've done into a follow-up program further down the line. Perhaps because, people get very disappointed if something really doesn't come out as a slam dunk discovery very quickly. And that's the natural outcome if you oversell a single drill project, that if it doesn't work in the investor's eyes, it's very difficult to get market momentum back. So let me very, very quickly, Canada, we did the drill program in Canada, and we got bonanza grade silver from 10 out of 19 holes last year. Some incredible grades out of that project. Monopo Farms in Botswana, we hit nickel sulfide, nickel up to 1.7%, small intersection, as I mentioned, in the second drill hole out of 3. Tati project in Botswana, we got that concentrated gold in a zone which highlighted and supported the pegging of the license next door, which we were granted, which has some much more significant anomalies there. Victoria, we were able to get in the first drill program high grade gold, which we announced recently from the first couple of holes out of that project, and obviously more news to come from that. In Haneti, we're waiting for those results, but we did the initial program to refine the targets a while ago. I think when was it? Back in 2020, early 21, and then we followed up with the diamond drill program recently, waiting for those results. Now I know a lot of people are wanting those results to come out, and ditto, we've just started that program there in Botswana. So those 6 programs, for the results that we've had to date, have been fantastically positive. Now, perhaps if I'd have been just focused on one and really building the message about the one with preparatory kind of build-up marketing announcements into the drill program, create a bit of a stir out of the drill program, get the results, the market reaction would have been better. And that, of course, is a temporary problem for our company. But I'm looking to build a substantial business that's diversified with multiple projects, with multiple opportunities for major metal discoveries. Doing it not just with our own resources in-house, but with corporate activity, with spin-outs and disposals to make sure that these projects have dedicated focus and can move forward at pace. But I think it's a really good point that's made. We haven't been able to get the fanfare that a lot of companies get with single projects. And we struggle with it. You know, very often we have a couple of days after an announcement before something else material happens in our business and we have to make another announcement. And that can lend people to think that there isn't much going on and there hasn't been company transformational news through the announcements that we've released to date. Now, as the planned spin-outs happen, as the disposals happen, as the business starts to focus and concentrate a little bit more, that will become less of a problem. But the investor who made that point is bang on the money. That's been one of our biggest challenges.
Okay. Well, just a slight follow-on from that. You talk about fanfare and IPOs, of course, will help drive the narrative of those particular projects housed there. I mean, do you think there is a need to change the narrative for the other projects kept in-house, for example, shift away from internal diversification narrative or provide much more project-level detail to get investors interested? This person's thinking here of a Kavango approach to the technical detail that Ben is quite good at articulating. Or are the team quite happy to keep beavering away until something spectacular arrives and the market wakes up to Power's value?
Yeah. Okay. So that's well, you know, Amazon as a business is now known for delivering everything to your door, but it was a bookseller a few years ago. And you know, the business changes in line with market conditions and opportunity and what it's able to deliver. Undeniably, our business will focus, you know, in certain areas as we move forward. We'll develop and adapt pretty much as we have done over the last 3 years. We started out 3 years ago as a business focused on West and Central Africa with 3 projects. We moved into North America, we moved into Australia, we expanded in Africa. We recognized that we had a big building portfolio. There was an opportunity to create vehicles mainly focused on London because there's thousands of resource companies in Canada, there's hundreds in Australia, there's 100 in London. You know, one of the main capital market centers, you know, in the world, and it's got one of the fewest number of junior resource companies. It's just wrong, and there is an opportunity. So we then morphed our business into saying, right, we're going to start to create our own value and build our balance sheet and create vehicles, which is something I've done for years now through my private family company. I've brought all of that into Power Metal Resources. And as the spin-outs happen, we'll learn more about ourselves and what we can do. We'll see the success of those vehicles, I hope. We'll see disposal routes, we'll see joint venture routes, earning routes, all sorts of different things emerge, and our business will develop as we move forward. But ultimately, an absolutely number one thing is we're targeting major metal discoveries. And nothing that we do detracts from that. Everything that we do increases our likelihood of making multiple discoveries on that scale, whether it be internally with our own resources or externally through other vehicles that are managed independently, financed independently, have their own strategic drive and operational direction.
Okay. Well, thank you, Paul. I'll give you a break. Come back to you in a moment or two. The next question I have is for the CEOs of First Development Resources and Golden Metal Resources. What are the differentials in management styles that will convince private investors to focus on Golden Metal Resources and First Development Resources as investment opportunities? So, Tristan, let me bring you in first. What do you think? What are the differentials in management styles that will convince private investors to focus on the FDR investment opportunity?
It's an interesting question. Look, I think let's look at it from a really high level. FDR, we are a blue sky exploration company. We are early stage across the board. We're in areas where they're in jurisdictions where discoveries have been made, but it's not an easy business. But what we have as a management team, and I think certainly is one of my attributes, is that we have a real passion for our industry, which may sound like a bit like a woolly answer, but in this industry, you've got to be prepared to go after it. Now, it's all well and good having a figurehead like myself who's very enthusiastic about what we're doing, but what's also really encouraging is that we have a very, very good board of directors who scrutinise, challenge, and support as we go through. It's certainly not me just saying, yeah, this is brilliant, let's go after it. It's well thought out, and it's all, we approach it in a methodical, multi-layered and clear way. And in terms of that clear, transparent communication, it's really important that our management style takes our investors when we get listed on a journey as well. So we want to be clear in the milestones that we'll look to achieve, and we will report against those milestones, which again isn't going to sound very groundbreaking, but I would imagine there are investors who have been frustrated by lack of news flow. It's a challenge for companies as well, because in the world that we live in, where there's an insatiable demand for instant news, it's not always easy in the exploration space. People have to be able to have a certain level of patience, but what we will do is we will be diligent, we will be open, we'll be transparent, and we'll be clear as to where we want to take the business. So if that answers the question, it's quite a woolly answer, but I guess accessible is another part of our management style as well.
Accessibility, yes. Okay, excellent. Okay, Oliver, the same question for you then. But your management style, what will convince investors to focus on GMR?
Yeah, another great question. So, I mean, in terms of sort of my management style, I think it's important to sort of quickly touch on my background and sort of where I've come from. So, being a geologist by trade, I used to run a consulting company back in Canada. I was heavily involved with sort of project management. We had about north of 40 different consultants and employees working for us at sort of the peak. So, that's kind of the area that I come from. I'm a technical person. I'm a geologist by trade. I've sort of, as I mentioned, been involved with project management in some really tough jurisdictions around the world. So obviously I bring that experience and that past into sort of my role at GMR. So in terms of how does that sort of flow through the business and run through the business, being a technical person, my sort of forte, or the area that I feel the most comfortable, is in project management. It's in sort of exploration planning and carrying out, exploration programs. So typically, when investors want to have a chat with me, it's likely going to be, or could be a somewhat technical conversation. I like to kind of get my hands dirty and get into the drill data and the geochem data and the geophysical data, ultimately putting all those things together with the hopes of making a discovery. So the communications that you're going to get from GMR, they're going to be on the more technical side. Typically you're going to find an RNS that probably has a glossary in it. But I encourage investors to definitely reach out to me. We have same with FDR and with Power, we have a well-rounded board as well. So to complement my sort of more technical skill set. We obviously have guys that are much more experienced in sort of financial markets, communications, accounting, and those different types of areas. So really well-rounded board, but in terms of my management style, I really like to get involved with the technical side of the business, and investors should sort of, as a reason to invest, having their CEO understand the sort of exploration game, how to push projects forward, how to make discoveries, how to run exploration. I think at this stage in the business, I think it's really valuable to have a CEO who is comfortable in that area and can help push the various kind of assets in the portfolio forward with exploration and really well thought out exploration, whether it's drilling or geophysics or geochemistry.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Oliver. Well, hopefully we can maybe do one of our special features with you at some point if you're more technically minded and able to articulate that. They're always quite useful for investors to understand exactly what a project is all about, what stage it's at, and what you're doing. So as and when appropriate, might be worthwhile doing one of those with you.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Okay, Tristan, let me come to you. I have one more direct question, and I've got a question that comes to all three of you, and then we can go to the floor. So this is a nice one for you, Tristan. Many comparisons are being made between Greatland Gold's Javier discovery and the magnetic anomalies present at Walal. Can you list the synergies between the projects at the same stage Walal is at now?
Well, look, it's brilliant. It's very flattering to have even a comparison to what is, an incredible success story. I will say that every time that we speak, or I do talk about Walal, I make it very clear that at this stage we have a geophysical signature which does bear some similarities to the Walal deposit, but we also need to be very clear that that is as far as the understanding that we have at this stage goes, and we really need to stick a borehole into these anomalies to see what we do have. But if you look at the similarities, I think first off the bat, we are a junior exploration company looking to make a significant discovery. They were successful. We hope to emulate that success. As I've mentioned, we do have a good magnetic signature that warrants drill testing, and that's where GGP started, right? They're reprocessing of geophysics with more modern technology and techniques, gave a better defined drill target than previous license holders had, and it went from there basically. And if you look at the work that Power and FDR have done, we took geophysical data and we've reprocessed it and we've added to it and we've worked up, as we announced in our last Walal project update, we have defined a target the eastern anomaly, which consists of two lobes. We've got a better understanding of the depth, and we've got a better understanding of the target that we're going to be drill testing. From a company perspective, we're similar in that we're looking for targets in an underexplored area, and we're using phased, results-based, systematic work programs to drive the exploration forwards. So that is what I would suggest are the main similarities at this stage. It would be wonderful in 12 months' time. We could talk about further similarities in terms of mineralogical similarities, but it's exploration. We're at the start of the process. Well, we're not at the very start, but we're looking to go to the next level. So I guess ultimately we'll have to see where we are in 12 months, but hopefully we can have a similar conversation to the way that follows a similar narrative to the success of Javier.
Okay, good. Well, let's just stay on Tristan, because the question I have for the three of you is the last one before we go to what's been put in the group here. I have a question that says perhaps the ways to create investor confidence is for board members to have a percentage of their annual gross salary paid in fixed percentage of shares. So what do you think of that, Tristan, from your point of view?
Look, any sort of incentivization which is linked to equity is something I'm absolutely in favor of. We need to be aligned with shareholders. We need to be incentivized to deliver for shareholders. I like to think that FDR as a team and Power as a team as well, across and GMR and across all of the subsidiaries of Power, that everybody is aligned to that same objective, and that objective is to create value for shareholders. I've got no issue with that. It wouldn't be my decision. It'd be a decision for the board, but it's not something I would be against. Okay.
And Oliver, just the same question to you. What do you think of that concept of board members taking percentage of their salary in shares?
Yeah, no, I agree with Tristan completely. I think it's a fantastic idea. As Paul mentioned earlier in this Q&A, Power is not a lifestyle company. In terms of sort of the broader market, the management take salaries that are I would consider to be very modest. But that makes that ensures that they're aligned with shareholders. They're holders of equity in the company. They have options, and ultimately they're going to be successful if the company is successful, and in turn the investors are going to be successful. So being a spin out of Power, FDR and GMR, we have a very similar sort of mentality. And in terms of sort of board compensation, FDR and GMR are very much aligned. And it's something that we're definitely looking into. In terms of management fees as they stand right now, most of the board is actually taking their sort of monthly pre-IPO fees as equity, as stock in the company. So that's something that we already are doing in terms of sort of annual salaries going forward. As you will see in our various documents, they are very modest. And that just means that we are aligned with shareholders. So, we have equity in the company. 4 of the 5 board members of GMR took place in the pre-IPO financing. So, investors can be, rest assured that we are aligned with shareholders. One of the ways that we do incentivize board members is with options. So once again, we're not going to, essentially, we don't feel that it's right for the board members or the management to get rich while the investors don't. So we take modest salaries, and ultimately the success that we have is dependent on the exploration that we do and hopefully discoveries that we can make. So in the event that we do make a discovery, rest assured that the board and the management will do very well. But at the same time, the investors in that business will do equally as well. And that's how we think the business should be run.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Paul, do you have any sort of thoughts on that point before I ask some of the questions that have been put in the group?
Yeah, this is a great point about incentivization of management. It's actually quite a nightmare. What I think a lot of people don't realize that unless, for example, management options are written under Enterprise Management Initiative protection, EMI scheme protection in the UK, that they face swinging tax charges if they convert. If they exercise their options. So if the option price is 1p and they exercise their options when the price is 11p, then the 10p difference is taxable at marginal income tax rate in many circumstances. So that's a massive disincentive and a big problem. So I think if you're looking at these companies, generally only the executive directors who work more than 25 hours a week on boards are entitled to EMI options. And then it's very good, because then you're paying tax at 10% and it's got lots of protections in it. So I would look for those companies that don't just award options, but award them under EMI schemes. It's a good indicator that they are thinking that tax protection, so they're expecting to have some real value creation going forward. Now, in terms of issue of shares in lieu of fees and that kind of thing, or director salaries, I think it's a great idea. I would like to see a culture in the UK like we have in Canada, where if the share price goes up 10 times, that directors are able to sell some of the shares to reap some of the rewards that they've created through their own efforts. The culture in the UK isn't great for that at the moment. If people see directors sell a proportion of their holdings, there's a very negative reaction, even if the price is dramatically higher than when the process started. So that would be great if the culture got a little bit better for directors to make real money and share some of it alongside the investor base. I've always been eager and searching for new ways to incentivize myself and the teams, equity based. In Power Metal, all members of the team have access to options. You see from our announcements that we've really tried to incentivize people through equity, but not just the internal team members, but the people that we work with, some of the consultants that are important to our business and that kind of thing. And we'll continue to do that where we can. So yeah, I'm right up for that. I think that let's get alongside the shareholders. We are an entrepreneurial market, and if you're an investor on this market, that money that you invest, it's precious to you, very precious. If it isn't very precious, then you're going to lose it, because that's the nature of the market if you're casual in terms of what you do with your capital. And what I want Power to be, and I want Golden Metal to be, and I want FDR, First Development Resources, to be, are companies that people are willing to trust their precious resource, that capital, that cash, that money, trust those companies with, and feel that they stand a decent chance of making a decent return in exchange for placing their trust in those companies. I've had a long experience in the market and I know lots and lots of companies, and sometimes I do despair at the lack of alignment between management teams in an entrepreneurial company and their underlying shareholders. So you have my tick in that box, Mark, every day of the week.
Okay, Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Paul. So that's been, I think, 3 or 4 questions I can see that have come in from the group just now during the time we've been talking. The first one, what is the expected flotation dates for the up-and-coming IPOs as the second quarter is almost up? Paul, do you have any information on that? Maybe Oliver knows better.
No, sorry, I lost you then for a second. It dropped out. Could you just run through the question again?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yes. The what is the expected flotation date for the up-and-coming IPOs?
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's a specific information question. We get into real trouble if we answer that. We try and give in the announcements, guidelines as to where we're thinking, Q2, Q3, and it's all there in the relevant RNS for each of the vehicles. We will continue to do that. It's a little bit tricky because the process of IPO is an extremely complicated process. There are so many working parts that if we outline them all to investors, you would never kind of think that we're ever going to get these things over the line. And any of those working parts, for generally speaking, perfectly normal reasons, can hinder the process, slow it down, and so it's difficult to be precise with timescales. Now, I have to tell you, I'm not too unhappy about the fact that timescale wise, it's taken a little bit longer for certain IPOs to progress, because the market's been dire, and you would not naturally want to bring a vehicle into a desperately bad market. And we've had a really tough market for quite some time, but now it does seem to be getting better. So it's probably been fortuitous in that regard, the timing of these vehicles, coming to market. We do try and push as hard as we can, though, it has to be said, on the vehicles and the preparations. So we don't deliberately, slow things down. And I'm hopeful that we can get a little bit fortunate with good timing, with the vehicles ready, coming on the market when the market is a little bit more switched on than it has been for some time.
Okay. Now, Paul, you have talked about the uranium assets and the potential for a spin-off. Any developments on this? Is it still planned for 2022?
Yeah. Okay. As an investor, I hate it when management teams kind of avoid the questions. And it's really difficult to answer that one, because it will be giving specific information away that needs to be within an RNS. We don't hang back on our RNS. We do kind of publish extremely efficiently. We're highly active all the time in our business. We've kind of got, and I want to hand over to Oliver quickly in a second, but we've got a pretty red hot, package that Oliver and the team have pulled together in the Athabasca. We got to be careful with this. This is a big value proposition, and it's comprised of 7 projects, circa 450 square kilometers of ground, with multiple different features. All of which, as we've demonstrated to market through RNS, we broke that one down deliberately, by the way, and created data rooms for each project. All of those projects have, significant uranium prospectivity and very exciting packages. But don't worry. As soon as we get, to a point where we need to make an announcement, we will do. And I hope that the investor base out there look at what we're doing and can see that it's carefully constructed. But if you don't mind, Oliver, could you just give a flavour very quickly of the prospectivity potential and the excitement we feel inside the business with regard to the Athabasca?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Paul mentioned, we can't divulge too much as to sort of what the immediate plans are with the portfolio. But a lot of the feedback that we've gotten through various meetings and through investors is the need for uranium-focused vehicles in the London markets. Back in Canada, where I come from, combining the TSX, TSXV, the CSC, there's likely north of about 20 companies that are focused on uranium exploration, and most of those are within the Athabasca Basin. Compare that to the London markets, and there's very few ways for investors to get exposure to uranium. I think we're in the very early innings of what could be a pretty, incredible uranium bull market. So, we're sort of, we're in a very fortuitous position at the moment. We're not looking to rush into anything, but in terms of what we've amassed, as Paul mentioned, it's a very sizable portfolio. We have a dedicated uranium geologist on staff now helping us push those assets forward. And to not, sort of divulge too much, as I mentioned, a lot of investors and the feedback we've gotten is that there is a need for additional uranium focused vehicles in the London markets. And on top of that, I think those focused on the top jurisdiction in the world, being the Athabasca Basin in Canada, would certainly be sort of well received. As it stands now with the 7 projects, I truly believe that, there's potentially 2 or 3 standalone listings right there, considering the size and the scale of these projects and how prospective they are. So yeah, as Paul mentioned, we encourage investors to keep an eye on RNSs as we move forward here. There's a lot of stuff happening in the background. And I think, through power, investors in the London markets have a very unique opportunity to get direct uranium exposure. And we're looking at ways at pushing that portfolio forward at pace here. So stay tuned.
Okay, stay tuned. Thank you very much, Oliver. Tristan, I have a question for you. I noticed that Gemma Cryan was appointed as Director of FDR in March 2022. She appears to have a geology background and also had a part-time background in GGP during her career too, according to her LinkedIn profile. This is someone's done the research. Could you share with us a bit more about how you came to appointing Gemma and the role that she will play in FDR moving forward?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, what I'll say is that Gemma is a fantastic appointment to the FDR board, not least because she was involved in the discovery of Javier with GGP, but she's also a consummate professional and someone who will, as I mentioned earlier, scrutinise, challenge, and then support what we're doing as a business. Look, all of us in the power team, we have our own networks. The mining industry is massive, but it's also very tight knit as well. So it's always good to be able to liaise with colleagues and get recommendations or advice. But again, to Paul's point, we're not looking to just bring in mates of mates to build the board. So it was a series of connections which put us in contact with Gemma, which led to a couple of meetings to discuss what we are as a business, as FDR, where we want to take it. And obviously someone with her background, with her credentials and her reputation, it was a really good appointment, and I'm really pleased to have her as part of the team.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So the next question I have, Paul, I guess this would be for you. When can we expect to hear about the Haneti drilling results?
Yeah. Okay, so it's another one of those. Again, I got to apologise. I totally get the market rules, limited disclosure outside RNS, and we have to follow it very carefully, particularly nowadays. With the social media type spread of information, you have to be balanced and careful what you say. As soon as possible. We're great joint venture partners across our different projects with different companies. We are slightly annoying for our partners as well, because we're always eager for first of all operational progress, secondly quality communications, and thirdly getting results out to market as soon as possible. So don't worry, we are pushing a lot and we have the same enthusiasm as our investor base. Haneti is an interesting project. It's been around for a while. It's not been drilled previously, apart from this joint venture with Katoro Gold. It offers dramatic potential. It's an 80 kilometers long ultramafic complex. It's polymetallic, in that, if that's the right word. I'm an accountant, not a geologist, so the Oliver and Tristan will probably be kicking me later. But it has prospectivity for nickel, PGMs, copper, gold, lithium, all sorts of different things. It's a beautiful project. Look, as soon as we can get the results out, we will.
Okay. Is a TSX listing for Silver Peak still on the cards? Bonanza grades of shallow silver sounds very valuable, but things seem to have gone a little quiet.
Yeah, in a portfolio model, you find that certain things will move ahead, and certain things will appear to be lagging. And sometimes they are lagging for a whole variety of reasons. We're very careful with regard to Silver Peak. We liked the project from the start. Obviously, we wouldn't have done the deal in the first place if we didn't. There aren't that many great silver investment opportunities out there. The important thing for us is not to rush in certain cases, but is to do the right kind of structuring, get things right. That can take a little bit longer than planned. Some of our projects interest that today, before they came into the company, have been many months in development or work to build them into an acquisition by Power. Things don't generally happen as quickly as we would like to. We are pushing it forward. If there was any change of approach or any problems or challenges of a material nature, we would announce to market, of course. That's our obligation. And we like Silver Peak a lot. We just want to do the right thing with it, and that's what we're working on.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure you can answer. We have talked about the IPOs before. What will Power's post-IPO percentage holding be in the first IPOs? But I'm guessing that is still being decided and can't be talked about.
I'll get my calculator out. Work it out. It depends. It depends on various factors. Not least, the IPO raises that are undertaken, the extent to which that dilutes, and there are other factors as well. We will have a very significant position in all the planned IPOs. We have a very significant position now in the first class metals, the disposal going into IPO. And that's the aim going forward. And one important point, just to link back to the earlier comments about selling of shares and flipping, we wanted to send out a message to the market that we are not flippers. We don't take stock in and then flip it just because we need a little bit of cash, or because we don't have the same level of confidence as the management team of the vehicles that we've got investments in. We wanted to show that we were strong. And that's really important now, because as we go into this IPO process, to demonstrate that Power Metal is a strong, supportive holder of stocks is a really important thing. It gives confidence to the market that these IPOs have a real, a strong shareholder behind them who will be supportive of the business. And why would I say that? Well, because every single one of these IPOs is built around a principle of potentially dramatic value creation. Golden Metal Resources, Pilot Mountain, Oliver has spoken about. First Development Resources, the Wallal project with its similarities to Javier in a number of respects, and its potential for major metal discovery. Celta project for its uranium rare earths, prospectivity, just at the right time and in the right type of jurisdiction. And just up the road, 75 kilometers, I think, north west of Nolan's Bore, the big Arafura rare earths deposit. There's real potential to make money. So we wouldn't want to be heavy natural sellers, from the off in these vehicles.
Okay. Will the current format of Paul's and Power's bod communications extend across all subsidiaries at all times? I think this is probably fair to say, having listened to both Oliver and Tristan this evening, that is the case. But yeah, Tristan, you would agree, I presume. You want to keep up the some similar comms that Paul has been doing all this time.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think it's a good question to put out to the people listening as well. I mean, what do people want? I mean, you can often see people comment on the number of RNSs that Power put out, but as Paul has alluded to, there is a lot of news flow that needs to get communicated now. FDR is unlikely to be as prolific in terms of news flow, but we will have multiple projects all being developed, structured but simultaneously. And it's our absolute intention to keep everybody informed as best as we can, because if I was on the other side of the table, that's exactly what I would want.
Yeah. Okay. And Oliver, you plan to do a similar kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once again, being a spin out of Power, we, ultimately we share office space. We share a lot of the same support staff. So the same sort of level of communication that you see with Power, you can expect that with GMR. I think it's a testament, or the fact that Tristan and myself were on this sort of Q&A session alone should show investors sort of what to expect, as well as that. I mean, in terms of FDR and GMR being at the pre-IPO stage, the level of communication that we already have is in most cases better than most already listed companies. So I think that will continue throughout. And in terms of all the companies that I've been involved with over my career, Power in terms of their communication with the market is by far the best I've ever come across. And I think it's really inspiring to see how well things are communicated and how transparent the company is with shareholders. And absolutely, you will see the same level of sort of transparency in marketing communications with GMR.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I have a couple more questions, and then we can probably close for this evening. Paul, this is probably for you. With POW's substantial holding in first-class metals, will there be a POW representation on the FCM board? If not, how will POW's shareholders' interests be protected?
That's a really good question. I've restructured and refinanced a lot of vehicles over the years, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of see a number of them. A number of them they can't see because it was done in the background. And I can tell you, there's been some absolutely knockout of the park successes. I met Gervais Heddle back in 2016. And I thought, I went him at I think it was the Master Investor Show, and instantly you could just tell he had the right mix of personality, thoughtfulness, commitment, the right kind of approach. And he went into Greatland Gold, joined me on the board when I was there already after we restructured, refinanced it. And that Greatland Gold story happened because of him. So I'm fully aware that one person on a board can make a dramatic difference. But one person on the board isn't, in most circumstances, enough because it's only one vote. I think the most important thing is you have to back those propositions where the board as a whole you have confidence in. I think you need to feel that the business model that the board are deploying is effective and efficient. It's well capitalized. It has a good kind of approach to marketing and comms, all these things we've kind of touched on tonight. I think, and each transaction is different, but quite commonly you'll see that companies in our position will have the right to nominate an individual to a board. Whether we would choose to do it or not is is a kind of a confidential matter as their business progresses, particularly when it comes to things like listing processes. But yes, I mean we are, if we feel that board participation is important for whatever reason, and it will never be because we don't trust the board. But if we feel it's a good thing to have, we will have board participation. We are trying to sell the message that in terms of spin out vehicles, in terms of disposals into other vehicles, that we have confidence in the management team, and in the corporate transaction structure that we put around it, because sometimes it's good to have insurance. In certain of the vehicles, I've learned that over the years to my cost, that if you don't actually, in some cases, have the right protections in place, then things don't quite work out according to plan. But I wouldn't specifically comment on any one transaction and say, yes, Fred is our representative, unless it was appropriate to do so.
Okay. Right. Well, I have, I think, three questions. I think a couple of them are fairly swiftly answered. How can investors take part in any of the approaching pre-IPOs or IPOs, Paul? It's a simple matter of contacting your broker.
Go onto our RNS feed. I'm trying to find it now. I should remember everything. I know. I apologize. But we released an announcement basically saying if you're interested in the IPOs that we're doing, then you can register. Now, I'm trying to furiously find it on my phone now, so I sound a bit disjointed. If you click that RNS, it takes you through to a link on the Power Metal website. And what we'll do is we'll tweet it out tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll tweet it out for the next few days so that people can see it on Twitter as well. But that invites participation. So if you've got an interest, then you'll have to fill out a form. You'll go onto a database, and you'll give your approval for that. And then that will be sent to the broker that handles each specific IPO. Okay, so and then they will contact you. They have to go through onboarding, they call it, and they have to make sure that you as an investor meet their risk criteria and that kind of thing. But they will do that, and they'll take you through it. And if that's successful, then you can participate in the IPO processes.
Okay.
This is terrible. I should know.
That's good. We'll keep an eye on the Twitter feed then over the next couple of days. But that makes it nice and easy, Paul. Thank you very much for that. So just the last point I have, it's sort of on Katoro Gold. There's a couple of questions. The first part is, does Power still hold 10 million shares in Katoro? And does Power Metals or Paul Johnson believe that CAT is undervalued at 0.8p? And would Power buy stock on the market in any resource companies that the board believe are undervalued to create profit on the balance sheet at a later date? So, yeah, the first thing on the 10 million shares, are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, well, same answer as before. We don't unless it's in an RNS. We wouldn't specifically comment about holdings because it opens up a can of worms. But I repeat what I said, that we are setting out our stall as being long-term holders. Many of these, even if it's not perhaps in the public domain on occasions, what a specific holding is. Many companies now undertake Section 793 shareholder searches. They can see exactly who holds the shares because it breaks down the nominee accounts into individual shareholders. So the companies that we do business with would certainly know if we've been selling their shares or even buying their shares. So it's difficult to answer specifically. What was the second part? Sorry.
The second part was about effectively buying stock on market in resource companies that you believe are undervalued to effectively create profit on the balance sheet at a later date.
Yeah, well, I've been quite fortunate over the years with buying and selling shares in the natural resource space, and there are occasions when things are stonkingly cheap, and you can buy positions and make an awful lot of money from it. We set up a junior resource investment fund last year, so it's probably a bit longer than that. I'm getting old and forgetful. Where we could actually put money into what we thought were undervalued junior resource plays, and that is running. And we would definitely, if there was capital available, make investments in undervalued juniors. Now, would we invest in the companies that we have joint ventures with? Yes, and theoretically that's perfectly possible, but of course we are blocked by the fact that these are generally active joint ventures, and we're very often in possession of news information that could be price sensitive, and that means that there's many periods, like with our own company, the directors struggle to buy shares in Power because of our activity. Many times we wouldn't be able to buy shares in our in the companies where we had active transactions.
Okay. Excellent. Well, that's an hour and a half. Thank you, all three of you, Paul, Oliver, and Tristan, for your time this evening. I see some comments that people are saying they appreciate your time. So thank you very much for giving us your time this evening.
But
I understand. Go on.
Sorry. There's one thing to say, Mark. It's we've been through a difficult few years. All of us who are investors, if you're here today in the natural resource space, got to take my hat off to you. Well, fantastic, well done. Generally speaking, phenomenal opportunity follows particularly perniciously bad phases, and I hope that's the case here for us. But we do appreciate the engagement from investors. We have different personalities in our business. As you can tell tonight, we're running with the three models that are on display tonight: power, golden metal, first development. We're running different propositions. If anyone wants to ask any questions, please get in touch with us. We do try and get back to everybody, and occasionally we might skip something. Well, me in particular, Oliver and Tristan are far more switched on than I am. But if I miss something, just ping me another message. I apologise, and I will get back to you. If you put your money into our companies, I've said this before, whether it's £100 or £1 million, it makes no difference to me in the slightest. That investment relative to your personal wealth could well be very significant, and you are entitled to speak to members of the team. None of us are scared, none of us are hiding away, and it is an open door policy to the investor base.
Okay. Excellent. Well, on that point of people asking you questions, I do. There's a couple of things I think coming up. I think Power Metals are appearing on our new program, the Stopbox premiere, on the 18th of May. So looking forward to that. It's a live event on video. It's always very exciting to do that. And of course, I believe Pow are at the UK Investor Show on the 21st of May. So then, of course, people, if they can make it down, can actually come and meet you, Paul. And Oliver and Tristan, will you be attending that show as well?
Yeah, FDL over there. Over there.
Yeah, GMR as well.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank
you.
We do have
for your time.
Sorry, we do have free pens if anyone wants to come and collect a pen from the stand.
Well, free pens are always very good, aren't they? Yes.
And we will be there. You can actually, if you click the link on the announcement today, you'll be able to book one-to-one meetings with the three of us if you want it. Do you want to have some dedicated time? We've got a little diary system running in the background. And then the final thing to say is IPO investor participation. It was the 28th of September that we released the announcement saying, look, register here. So that link is still valid. And if you want to use that, then please do.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Paul Johnson, the CEO of Power Metal Resources, and Tristan Bottas, the CEO of First Development Resources, and Oliver Friesen, the CEO of Golden Metal Resources. Thank all three of you again for your time. And that's it. That brings us to a close. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And I'm sure we'll be doing this again in the not too distant future. But for now, good night, everyone.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like, or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stopboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.